Hello, lovely Year 10s. How are you all? I hope you're all well. It's been a long time and I'm really missing you. Anyway, I thought I'd make you a little video to help you with this writing today. So enough of looking at me. I'm going to try and get the technology sorted out here. Put the visualizer down like... What have I done? Okay, got it the wrong way round. Good start. Okay, here we go. So, you've been doing a great job with your poetry and now you're having a go at writing, and this is exactly the same kind of writing that you did when we did your speeches this time last year. I know I didn't have all of you, but I did have some of you. You all did a brilliant job on that, and I want you to try and think about the skills that you use there to plan for this writing today. I'm just going to plan for it today and get as many ideas as possible, and then we'll be writing it next week, but thought I'd give you a little bit more help. So this is the title here. It's very lengthy, and as it says on the PowerPoint, you don't need to address every single point of the title, and really you should probably choose a bit that resonates with you, which means you think, yep, okay, that's an argument that I could see that I could put forward. So when I looked at this, it is a bit wordy. Education is not just about grades you achieve. I agree with that. It's about creating well-rounded, confident, empathetic individuals who are prepared for the challenges of the world that throws at them. The challenges that the world throws at them. It's quite wordy. The education system needs to change to become less about academic subjects and more about the real world. Well, I think this is the bit that really sums it up. The education system needs to change. It needs to be less about academic subjects, more about the real world. So I'm going to focus on those bits. I will think about grades as well. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start off with by actually thinking about some of the logical reasons that I could argue this point, that our education system needs to change. So you want to have 3 or 4 main points to think about, and we'll fill these into a proper plan afterwards, but I'm going to write down some examples of some points that I would make, and you can use these if you want. And if you want to pause the video at any time and make your own notes, then that might be a good idea. So I'm going to focus on this bit, less about academic subjects to start with, because I think that sometimes not all our subjects are useful at school. So I might argue some subjects aren't useful. Can you see that? Yeah. Okay, let's just put it straighter a bit. Some subjects are not useful after school. Now I'm sure you'll all agree with that. There are subjects that you don't want to study because you don't think they're going to be useful later. So that might be one of my points that I could talk about. Okay. You might want to say with that there should be more practical subjects, but I'm just going to start off with a headline idea like that. Some subjects are not useful after school. By the way, just the academic subjects, when we talk about academic subjects, what we mean are the traditional things like geography, history, RE, even English and maths, but rather than practical subjects like DT and maybe music and drama. Okay. Something else that I'm going to say about academic subjects and grades, I might put something down here about grades. I think one of the reasons that our system needs to change is because grades equals pressure equals exam stress, and we all know that there is an awful lot of talk about the stress that young people are under, and that this leads to mental health issues because people are so stressed about their exams that they want to do well but get very stressed, and that the system is helping to promote that. So I think there's pressure pressure on children to score in the traditional subjects, and that can be quite negative for lots of people. Okay, I'm going to think about this point about the real world now. Why do we think that education is preparing us for the real world? Well, I would say that there are two things here. One should be more practical skills for life after school. So might say available at school. So let's think about what would help us prepare for the real world. So it might be something to do with skills such as carpentry or plumbing, so skills like that. I might be thinking about financial skills, so that you can manage your own finances, and you also have an idea about how to help in a financial way in a job you're in. I might think about having skills like helping others, caring skills. Okay, so lots of things that I could say about how schools could give children more practical skills, and I want you to think about that. So that's just an idea that I've started with. And the other thing that I might think about the real world is that I might think about personal qualities, because this was talked about here, individuals who are prepared for challenges of the world. So I might think that schools should do more to develop the personal qualities of students. So I'll just say should develop personal qualities, and I suppose I'm thinking about things like teamwork, communication skills, so people know how to speak to each other. Move this along a little bit. That people have resilience to deal with situations, that they have good timekeeping, I don't know, but teaching people practical skills about the person that they are that might help them get a job is one thing that I think could be changed about the system. Having the actual practical skills, so whether it might be something vocational like carpentry or plumbing that's being taught, or finances or caring, and that you could argue might be better than just putting pressure on children to get grades, which causes a lot of can cause mental health issues, and also the fact that some of the things you could argue learn at school are not so useful after school, and I'll leave you to think about that. So I've got 4 good ideas here. That's a bit of a messy way to do it, and so what I'm going to do is show you how I'm going to put these into a planning sheet. Now I put this planning sheet onto onto the PowerPoint, and those of you who've worked with me will have seen it before. Okay, so once we've got our ideas, they don't have to be, by the way, ideas that you 100% believe in. They're arguments that you could have. More on the angle later. There's quite a lot on the angle in the PowerPoint that is attached to the lesson about thinking about who you are, and we'll just have a think about that now. So in terms of the skills that we've thought about, let's just bring them back here, the arguments. Let's think about who would argue this. Who would argue that the education system needs to change? Because really that's where you want to start. You want to start on your plan, somewhere in your introduction, thinking about the ethos. Okay, the ethos, remember, is what makes it believable that you're writing about this. So this is where you decide whether you are writing as me as a year 10 student in 2020, or whether you think you want to write about this topic as somebody else, which you can do in the exam if you want to. So you might be, in your introduction, you might decide that you're going to write these arguments as you, a student. Let's just see if you can write this. It could be because you're worried, or maybe you want to just be a little bit older and you're unemployed, you can't find a job, and you think the system has failed you. Okay, but who else might have an interest in thinking about the education system changing? Well, I suppose a parent, also could be kind of anxious about a child. Okay, but there are other people in the community and society who are also going to be have an interest in the way that children are educated. So a big one might be an employer, okay, who might think that people have the wrong skills. And on the PowerPoint there are some detailed examples of how you might speak as one of these people, as a parent, about your concerns, or as an employer, so you can have a look at that. You might speak about it as a teacher and say that you think that the curriculum is too narrow and not teaching children the right kind of things. So before you do any more detailed planning, think about who you're going to write as, and you will say that in your introduction. Okay, you would say something like, as a parent or student, I feel, and say what you think about it. Okay, and we'll talk a little bit more about the introduction in a minute, because I just want to show you where the arguments go that we've said before. You want to think of a good way to pull your audience in, but we want to just think about what to do with the main body of the writing first. So on this, we've got this sort of plan here, which has the introduction, the conclusion, and then you'll meet three main arguments. And I've put logos on here. If people can't remember what these funny terms mean, I've put it up here, and there is also a slide as well. And the logos is basically linked to the word logical. It's your logical arguments to persuade people about your point of view. So we've already thought about these, and these were our arguments here, but they were a little bit scrappy. So I'm going to put them into here, what we kind of said, into these arguments. So the first argument that we said, the main point we wanted to make, is that some academic subjects not useful. So you're really just making a neater plan here. Okay, and I might put into that tie into that more practical subjects needed. Okay, and we had some other ideas on our other sheet about practical subjects. I won't copy them all in now, but those two arguments could be tied together. Okay. I might put, one of my other arguments was that students need personal skills, need to develop personal qualities. Okay, so this is what we said here about teamwork, communication, resilience, etc. E.g. teamwork. I'll just put that in there for now. I can remember my notes later. And what other arguments do we have? I might say something about exams and grades equals stress, so that will remind me. I say the mental health issues. There's lots of stuff you could say there about the way that schools are set up at the moment, and it causes students to get a great deal of stress. Now these will be arguments that are important to any of these people. Perhaps a little bit less so to the employer. The employer might focus much more on these two, but they're still important arguments. And what you need to do now is think about how you're going to flesh those out. So what else can you say about which subjects you think aren't useful? So there's one of these plans on the PowerPoint. If you do have a printer, you could print it off and fill it in. If you don't, it really doesn't matter. You can just draw it up in your book, or you can do it in any way that you want. But the body of your essay is going to be the three main arguments, and if you're not sure what to use, I would use these, but you're going to have to go beyond just saying what I've said here. You need to think about why people need teamwork, or how they could learn that at school, and what other skills they might need. You need to think about what exactly it is that causes stress for children about their grades, and when, and in what year group, and what could be done about it. So that should help you think about three really good solid arguments that are going to answer the question. You've had a think about who you want to write as, and you can write some more ideas in there about that. We'll leave the conclusion just for a minute. So the other thing you want to think about planning for today is to be using powerful devices really to bolster your argument. So on the planning sheet here, I've put these boxes to remind you that to give weight to your argument, you need to try and use some persuasive techniques. And these are really the aquaforest techniques, but remember, you do not need to use every single one. The examiners don't really like it if you use too many. But on the planning sheet, I would have a little think about an anecdote, a little story that you could use to help prove your argument. Now, this might be that you are a parent and you have never used one of the subjects you used at school. It could be that you are a teacher and you have seen a particular child extremely stressed about their exams and not doing very well, even though they were really talented. Or it could be that you have run something as an employer that develops people's skills that they didn't have at school. So it's just a little story, something you know of, somebody you know. You will have to probably make it up, and you could make some notes about that in there. Statistics are obviously really useful, so have a look online because you're at home, for some realistic statistics about the number of people who've got jobs when they leave, or maybe the number of people who are getting students who get stressed about exams, or you may and you will in the exam have to make these up. So you could, with that, as long as they sound realistic, make up a statistic about the number of students that feel unhappy with what they're learning, or the number of parents that are anxious. For now, you can try and find a statistic or some facts that you could use. Quotation from an expert is also important. So if you're not writing as an employer, you could have a quotation from a large employer, what they've said about it, or a quotation from an academic. You probably wouldn't have a quotation from another student because they don't really have much authority with the MP, but you're trying to persuade an MP about something to change, and you want to sound like you can pick out things from real life, real facts and statistics, and things that other people have said. I put those for planning. They don't have to go with those arguments. You can use them where you want, but that's just to remind you. Another thing to remember is to try and use emotive language. So think about some planning for some emotive words that you can use down here. And you might repeat a particular word to try and make it stand out, and make sure that you're showing you can use some techniques. So there's lots to be filling in on this sheet. I hope that makes it a little clearer. The main things I want you today are to put as many notes down about the three main arguments you're going to use. Okay, once you've stated an argument, you need to have some detail, and within that detail you might use one of these techniques to sort of create that argument, and then look at the next argument and the next argument. You should aim for 3. If you've done all that and you've filled in these boxes, you can start to have a bigger think about the introduction and the conclusion. And I've included on this presentation the slides, which you may have seen before, about techniques you can use to draw the writer in to your introduction, and techniques you can do to really make your reader or audience think and feel something at the end. So have a look at those slides, and you could start to use those to choose how you're going to do your introduction and conclusion. But for now, fill in this sheet. Doesn't matter if you can't print out the sheet, just draw it up in your book in a way that seems logical in your mind. I hope that's been helpful. There's also the other PowerPoint as well, so do have a look at that, and hopefully that PowerPoint might make a bit more sense now that I've talked about it. But you may find that I've just droned on and you're bored of listening to me. But anyway, that's like old times. I hope you're all really well. I will be online, I'll be at my computer at the time of your lesson, so drop me a line if you're still confused or you've got a question, and we'll speak soon. Cheerio.